Hello, beautiful people. My name is Amanda Zitto. This is my beautiful Africa twin, and this is my third solo motorcycle trip across the US and back. I'm on a mission to visit every state in the continental US before I visit Alaska, and I have 14 states left to go. I covered a lot of territory already, but now we're finally in New England, and we're headed to the top of Maine, surrounded by fall colors. Good morning, beautiful people from Grand Island, New York. I'm at the little Niagara Falls KOA. Today we're gonna make a quick stop at Niagara Falls and then start heading further east into New York. I think I'm headed to Lake George today. It's gonna be a brisk one today. It's in the 40s right now, and I think it's gonna max probably hit 55 when I get to Lake George, but for the majority of the day it's gonna be in the 40s. And I'm layered up. I have a heated shirt underneath of most of my layers, and then I have heated gloves and heated grips and hippo hands. And I think I'm gonna wear my rain suit all day just as a wind blocker. I also put on 3 layers of socks today. So I have 2 liners and then a big heavy duty ski sock. Maybe my toes won't freeze today, fingers crossed. But we are doing better time-wise than we were doing yesterday because I got up at a reasonable time. Well, because I went to bed at a reasonable time. I think it's about 9 o'clock now, which is much better than the 11 o'clock that I left yesterday. So I feel good about that. Yeah. Let's go. I was grateful to wake up with clear-ish skies for my visit to Niagara Falls. I will admit the better view is definitely on the Canada side. However, there's still no way to describe being able to get that close to a major landmark that is impossible to put its scale into perspective without being there. It's like saying you have to see the Grand Canyon in person to really understand the scale. It sounds cliche, but it's true. After staring at the falls for way too long, I grabbed a quick little lunch at the visitor center before I headed on down the road. My first proper experience on a toll road also meant that I got my first ever experience of a toll road service station, which is much fancier than the rest areas on the western half of the US. It made me think of those fancy highway rest areas in Japan that also have all kinds of little shops inside. Traveling the East Coast can be pretty expensive compared to other parts of the US. It can be really easy to find a lot of expensive things to do, especially if you Google the best things to do in New England in the fall, which is sure to show you a list of activities that all come with an entry fee. However, there's just as many free things to see, and the landscape in the countryside is beautiful and winding, and when you can get away from the main roads, it is just gorgeous. I do a lot of little things to try to save pennies here and there. One of them is that I use an app called Gas Buddy to try and find the cheapest gas stops, not Spawn. Yes, traveling on a motorcycle is already way cheaper than in a car, just thanks to the fuel mileage, but when you're on the road for a month, the difference in savings could be worth a few extra meals out when it's all said and done. I also use an app called Travel Spend to track every single purchase along the trip to make sure that I'm staying on budget. Well, we've made it home for the night, which is this lovely cabin at the Lake George KOA. Unfortunately, there's no heater. There's an air conditioner in the wall, but there's no heater. And it's 40 degrees. Yep. I'm gonna get the bike unpacked, put a new battery in my heated base layer, and get into my sleeping bag immediately. Good morning, beautiful people from our KOA outside of Lake George and our lovely little cabin here. We survived the night. It was cold, but we survived. I'm very grateful that I have that little heated sleeping pad liner. I'm very grateful for my rechargeable hand warmers and my down booties and my very warm sleeping bag and a good hat. All things that collectively make sleeping in the cold survivable. Once I got into the sleeping bag and got all cozied up, I was fine. I slept through the night. Everything was okay. It's just like the getting up and moving when it's 40 degrees. It's a little bit harder. I'm supposed to camp tonight. Will I succumb to weakness and just get a hotel room? We're going to find out together. I've decided that I'm going to make that decision when I get that far. If I get there and I can't feel my toes, we might get a hotel room. I'm not going to lie. I made myself some tea. The exciting thing for today, though, is that we're going to go through Vermont, and I'm going to ride the Vermont 100 and go up to a little town called Stowe, and I am super excited about this. We're getting to the part of the trip that I planned this trip for, and I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a great day. Yeah! I'm finally kind of getting used to the Eastern time zone, so I got up at like 7 this morning. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's like 9:30 right now. I'm doing great. Everything is awesome. Let's hit the road. There are so many lovely curvy roads in New England that don't require any entry fee and also double as my favorite form of leaf peeping. The Vermont 100 is a moto classic according to this Butler map. You can actually find Butler maps on motocampnerd.com, who has kindly sponsored this video, which is how I was able to feed myself and pay for the gas on this trip. If you're unfamiliar with Butler maps, they are specialized motorcycle road maps that highlight the best routes in a particular state or region using a color-coded rating system, with the most exciting roads being marked as G1 and progressively lower ratings from there for less dramatic routes. They're also the company that prints the BDR maps. Moto Camp Nerd is a curated outdoor gear store online, and they have a brick-and-mortar location in North Carolina. They carry all the big brands we know and love, but you know it will pack well on your bike. They have incredible customer service, and you know that you're supporting a fellow motorcyclist when you buy your camping gear from them versus a big box store. They also sell the paperback copy of my cookbook, which is also available to be shipped anywhere in the US. Links in the description. After a lovely ride, I arrived in Stowe just around lunchtime, and there were quite a few people there, to nobody's surprise. Speaking of how I save money while I'm traveling like this, I do my best to make my own food for 2 out of the 3 meals a day, and I try, when I do eat out, to only eat out at lunchtime because it tends to be the cheapest meal of the day on most menus. I also try and pick out special restaurants before the trip, so when I do spend money eating out, it is a treat. I'm sure it goes without saying, but camping is the ultimate way to save money while traveling. Having good quality camping gear like what you can find on motocampnerd.com can save you money in the long run, so you don't have to stay at expensive hotels. My Exped Dura 8R sleeping pad has an R value of 8, which means it's going to keep me nice and insulated from the cold ground tonight when it drops down to the predicted temperature of about 20 degrees. This, in combo with a good sleeping bag and a good tent, is going to keep me warm and dry. And the more you use it, the more the cost per use goes down. If you're somebody who does math like that. Well, we have made it safe and sound to Twin Mountain, New Hampshire. I enjoyed Vermont very, very much today. I'm so glad that I did the Vermont 100 highway. That was awesome. I can't say that I would ever go back to Stowe, though. I equate Stowe, Vermont to what it's like driving through Jackson, Wyoming on a weekend. And today was like a Tuesday. I was supposed to eat at this little apple cider place that does like luncheonettes. And when I got there, the parking lot was just absolutely packed. I could see people through the windows packed in like sardines, and I couldn't bring myself to do that. So I found somewhere else to eat. Ended up at a little pizza place, but I had to drive through what I'm assuming is downtown Stowe, or a part of the town where there's only a stop sign, like a 3-way stop. So it took quite a while to get through to where I could eat lunch. So I didn't end up going to Smuggler's Notch, even though like I've heard wonderful things about that area and how pretty it is, just because I was anticipating if there was that many people in town just looking for food, how many people were probably at Smuggler's Notch and all of the little pullouts for hiking trails and those kinds of stuff along that area. So I skipped it. And riding along the Vermont 100 was so worth today. That road was beautiful. From Stowe, I just kind of hightailed it here to the campground. I expected there to be more in Twin Mountain, and maybe I'm missing where the rest of the town is. Normally when there's this amount of like inns and motels, there's at least some kind of little grocery store. There is no grocery store in this town. The gas station has a little sign that says groceries, but their idea of groceries is mac and cheese and some canned soup. So I had some doctored canned soup for dinner. I threw in a little bit extra pasta and some extra seasoning to make it good. But yeah, it wasn't really anything to document, especially because it is quite dark. I got here at like 6, found my campsite, went to the gas station to get my groceries and came back, set up my tent. It was already dark twilight by the time that I finished setting up my tent, and by the time that I started making dinner, it was dark. And all of my lights were dead, so those had to charge. But I would still say today was an excellent day. I'm gonna try and ride Mount Washington tomorrow, but we'll see how the weather holds. And the next day, I'm going to the tippy top of Maine to Highway 0, if the weather lets me. I think it might be a little bit lower than 44 now. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. I woke up bright and early to check the weather report for Mount Washington, but unfortunately, due to icy conditions, it wasn't open to motorcycles, so I opted to ride my backup option instead. Thankfully, the Kancamagus Highway was not as packed as everybody said it would be, although the pullouts definitely were. It was gorgeous and definitely worth the detour.
Ride 10 deep into town. Another night of setting up and breaking down. And if we leave here tonight, we'll be halfway to Barstow by daylight. I'll take the wheel if you start to yawn. Just keep to traveling on. Tap my weak and shaky knees. At least I can rest my mind. Find some comfort in those yellow and white lines. They've been there all along. Keep to traveling on.
After I crossed into Maine, I started seeing these styles of houses everywhere, where the main house and the barn were obviously built separately, and then a covered walkway attaches them, and I became obsessed. I love them so much. I learned later they're called connected farmsteads or a house barn, and I love them. I stopped for lunch at a little diner where the waitresses were super kind to me before I continued on down this lovely forest road in Maine. This is incredible. Look at it. I love Maine. Maine might be my new favorite state. No, I can't say that. I still love West Virginia and Montana more, but Maine is up there. This is incredible. Sometimes you have to weigh the pros and cons of budget versus comfort, and to a certain point, safety. Thanks to my past self's research and the average temperatures in Maine during October, I knew that by the time that I got here, the weather would probably not be a situation I really wanted to be in a tent for. And I was right. So I pre-booked hotels for the next 2 nights in Maine to get the best price, even though it was peak season. Seriously, I paid $129 because I booked ahead of time, and when I arrived, someone was booking the last room there for twice that. It was crazy. So yeah, it pays to plan ahead. Riding in New England in the fall might be cold, but it is beautiful. Seriously, look at this. Look at it. Okay, and a little foggy. After a cold morning, I stopped at another little diner for my lunch, and I couldn't decide whether I wanted the hash or the French toast, and the nicest waitress was like, why not both? And I was like, you are the best. New England, I love your waitstaff. They're amazing. After a very long, straight drive, I made it to Fort Kent, Maine, and America's First Mile before I went and checked into my hotel in the rain to dry everything off. Good morning, beautiful people, from my hotel room here in Fort Kent, Maine, the home of America's First Mile and the start of US Highway 1. As you can probably see a little bit, there's chaos behind me, and we've got to get all of this put onto the bike and headed out of here. We're going to ride a small part of Highway 1, and we're headed to Bar Harbor today. Let's get packed up, shall we? U.S. Route 1 is the longest north-south highway in the United States, as it runs 2,369 miles from Fort Kent, Maine, all the way down to Key West, Florida. The Pacific Coast Highway, for comparison, from Port Townsend, Washington to San Diego, California, is only 1,650 miles. The direct predecessor to US 1 was the Atlantic Highway, an auto trail established in 1911 as the Quebec-Miami International Highway. In 1915, it was renamed the Atlantic Highway, and the northern terminus was changed to Calais, Maine. US Route 1 is also home to the world's largest model of the solar system, stretching 40 miles from Presque Isle along Route 1 to Holton. I didn't manage to stop for every planet, but I got some. The other thing that I loved about Maine was the sheer amount of farm stands on the side of the road was incredible. Farmers markets and farm stands are my favorite way to find fresh produce while I'm traveling. It can be 50-50 whether it's cheaper than a chain grocery store. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. but it is much higher quality produce most of the time because it's picked when it's ripe and sold locally instead of being harvested before it's ready so it can survive being transported on trucks across the country to the grocery store. I didn't have a giant shoe tree with 150 shoes on it on my bingo card, but here we are. I do prefer to get to where I'm going before nightfall, but I can't deny riding at sunset definitely brings out all of the most beautiful colors. Like, just look at it. Oh my God. Well, we did get here after dark, which is how it be sometimes, but at least this KOA left me a heater, so I'm stoked about that. It's still pretty chilly though, so I think I'm just gonna crawl into bed. I'll see you guys in the morning. Question for my end-screen crew. Would you camp when it's 44 degrees, or would you have found a motel? I regret going into Stowe just a bit. If I had known that it was going to be that packed, like it might as well have been Disneyland. If I had known that it was going to be that packed, I would have made an effort to stop at any of the numerous small towns along Highway 100, and felt better about spreading my money about, you know, because obviously Stowe receives an enormous amount of tourism, and I don't imagine that as many of those small towns along the highway probably received as much money. But that's not the way that it went today, and that is okay. I have the experience now. Hello, Vermont. Hello, New Hampshire. Hello, Maine. Get ready with me, cold weather edition. For base layers, I start with a Smartwool Intranet Thermal Base Layer top and leggings, and 2 pairs of REI sock liners. Next, I layer my battery-powered mobile warming heated base layer top, Smartwool Merino Sport Moto tights, and Stance Wool snow socks. Next, I layer in a Smartwool buff around my neck, a Pendleton cashmere sweater which keeps me nice and toasty, and Eddie Bauer fleece-lined pants. And finally, my Revit Sand 4 riding suit with the rain layer in the jacket and pants and the insulating layer inside the pants. And the Revit Discovery Gore-Tex boots. But I think I'm missing something. Lastly is the Revit Pacific 4 H2O rain suit and the Revit Stratos 3 Gore-Tex gloves.